Developing and integrating network capture capabilities into a .NET application requires the ability to select the suitable library and follow the required integration steps. With FiddlerCore, you can add network capturing and analysis capability to your .NET application. In this video, you will first learn about HTTP and HTTPS traffic capture and modification abilities, as well as which events to use. Following that, you will learn about various functional object model features for content filtering and modification. Finally, you will learn how to manage web traffic through the library. But before proceeding further, if you are interested in staying up to date with the latest developments in the world of technology, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be sharing videos on a variety of topics including new developer technologies, programming tips and tricks, and much more. So hit the subscribe button and join me on this journey of learning and discovery. Thank you. So let's have a look at the topics we are going to cover in this video. We are going to kick off by brief talking about what you expect to learn from this video. Then we will explore what FiddlerCore is. And following that, we will understand why FiddlerCore is important and useful for .NET applications. We will look at the key FiddlerCore concepts. We are also going to look at the use cases of FiddlerCore. After that, we are going to dig a bit deeper into a FiddlerCore libraries feature. We will see a demo of end-to-end integration of FiddlerCore with .NET application. We have lot to cover, so let's begin. But before we begin, I want to inform you that I am creating this video using FiddlerCore version 5.012. The topics covered throughout this course are also applicable and compatible with any version of 5. So with that said, let's get started. Expectations. In this video, we will not dive deeper into every fundamental aspects of FiddlerCore as a technology, but rather provide a high-level overview of FiddlerCore's capability by exploring some of its key and essential aspects. Furthermore, this video is only for .NET developers who want to understand the basics of this technology. As a result, if you use a different development stack such as Python, or if you are not a .NET developer, this course may not be entirely relevant to you. If in any case .NET development sparks you interest, you are welcome to follow along. So the topics covered by the video are related to what this tool is all about, and also exploring the reasons why you might need to use a toolkit like FiddlerCore, and the most important concepts behind the tool and its design, but also some high-level aspects on how to use the tool. What is FiddlerCore? FiddlerCore is a .NET library that allows you as a .NET developer to easily capture and modify HTTP and HTTPS network traffic from within your own .NET project or application. FiddlerCore, in other words, has the same functionality as the well-known Fiddler software application has, but without the user interface. In other words, it's Fiddler without the user interface. As its core, FiddlerCore as a technology allows .NET developers to capture incoming and outgoing HTTPS and HTTP network traffic. FiddlerCore, on the other hand, is not limited to that. It can also import and export network traffic data captures in various commonly used formats. FiddlerCore can also be viewed as your application's object model for content modification and filtering by .NET developers. FiddlerCore also allows you to save and reload network traffic, and it can be used across multiple devices via proxy registration. One of its best features, in my opinion, is that it integrates with Fiddler and Telerik's Test Studio. As you can see, FiddlerCore includes a wide variety of powerful and useful features. The key takeaway in any case is that FiddlerCore can be easily integrated into any .NET framework and .NET standard project or application. Why is FiddlerCore important? So far, so good. However, as a developer, you may be wondering what's in it for me, and why is FiddlerCore important and worth my time? At its core, FiddlerCore gives you as a .NET developer the ability to capture and modify network traffic directly from your own .NET project and applications without tears. If you are a full stack or web developer, you have probably used Fiddler to analyze web requests and responses on multiple projects. FiddlerCore operates in the same manner as Fiddler. It has the same capabilities but is tailored specifically to .NET developers and applications. So, it is similar to having Fiddler integrated in your own .NET application but without the Fiddler user interface and with the added benefits of being able to handle it using your .NET code. Furthermore, FiddlerCore is significant because it adds value to you as a .NET developer. Debugging in production, as you know, can be challenging, especially if the application you are debugging has some network issues that need to be investigated. Also, testing is become complex, involving scenarios where, and in particular having an application go offline during a network outage can trigger different outcomes. In scenario like this, FiddlerCore can help you. As a result, you can consider embedding FiddlerCore within your application as a way to ensure that your systems and application run smoothly. To summarize, FiddlerCore empowers .NET developers to analyze and manipulate network traffic within their own .NET code without requiring them to become network analysis experts. Another advantage of FiddlerCore is that it supports both .NET Standard 2.0 and the .NET Framework version 4.0 and 4.5. One thing to keep in mind is that FiddlerCore is a commercial product, and as such, a license is required to use it. There are two types of licenses available. You can use FiddlerCore for your own internal applications within your own company, and there is also the possibility of redistributing FiddlerCore as part of your application in any case you are building a commercial application. In any case, please feel free to check out the Telerik FiddlerCore website for more details. I have also mentioned this link in the description below. FiddlerCore Concepts. Now that we know what FiddlerCore is and why it is important, it is now time to explore some key concepts behind it. Let's start with a high-level overview of how it works. So, we have a Fiddler application class, and to this class we have attached some events, which we will explore later. We can use these events for listening to network traffics and changes. These events will be used by FiddlerCore to report information back to your .NET application. With the event attached, we can start the FiddlerCore application, which is done by calling the Fiddler application.startup method. We then do our work with the application, and once ready, we can stop FiddlerCore, which is done by invoking the Fiddler application.shutdown method. At a very high level, that's how it works. With regards to the event handler, we can work with it. The first is the Fiddler application.beforeRequest event. This event should be used when a client request is received. On the other hand, we have the Fiddler application.afterSessionComplete event. This event can be used when a session has finalized, so, for example, to notify a user or capture the traffic data. However, there is also a before response event, which can be used when a server response is received. So, to understand how these events get triggered, let's look at the following diagram. After the configuration of FiddlerCore has taken place, then FiddlerCore starts to listen for network traffic in the background. Then FiddlerCore retrieves and captures a session, and then raises the before request event. After that, it raises the before response event, and following that, it raises the after session complete event. Now, let's look at how we can get FiddlerCore set up. So here a basic FiddlerCore configuration example. Within the program function, we begin by hooking up the event or events that we want to listen for. In this case, we are subscribing to the after session complete event. And when that event occurs, we simply write a message to the console with some data. In this case, the URL of the session captured. Next, we create an instance of the setting that we want FiddlerCore to use, where we also specify in this case that we want to register and use FiddlerCore as a system proxy. Those settings are then passed to the startup method that is responsible for starting FiddlerCore. As its name implies, So FiddlerCore executes and we can shut it down by invoking the shutdown method as seen here. As we have seen, this is quite simple, but we can also use FiddlerCore to work with a custom root certificate in addition to the basic configuration, setup and core user types, such as acting as a system proxy or capturing network traffic. Aside from that, we can use it to import and export session data, as well as modify session flags to achieve specific results. Following that, we will look more closely into the sum of its features. Use cases. Use cases are simple examples of what we can do as .NET developers with the FiddlerCore library. FiddlerCore's technology has three major applications for .NET developers. The first has to do with application servicing and troubleshooting. Imagine your company produces state-of-the-art software for electric car engine manufacturers. These manufacturers use your software to run engine simulations before the electric car engine is built. Let's say that an engineer spotted a problem with a data transmission. What to do next? You can easily capture the app's network traffic and send it to your support or R&D team for further investigation by including FiddlerCores in your .NET application. Another important use case is for performance and unit testing of your .NET application. You can use FiddlerCore to replace your app's front end and back end, replicate APIs before they are built, and test against various scenarios and network loads. Finally, you can use FiddlerCore to perform network inspections and analysis to ensure that your app runs smoothly. So by breaking down the servicing and troubleshooting use case with FiddlerCore embedded within your .NET application, we will able to first capture the application's own network traffic, then we will able to send it to R&D and support for additional analysis and inspection. And because we have these capabilities built into the application, we won't need to go into client's machine directly because we have all of the network data at our fingertips. In terms of performance and unit testing, FiddlerCore can be used to mimic or replicate server APIs or to change API responses on the fly for our applications in order to test different scenarios and loads. FiddlerCore can also be used to simulate specific network conditions and network loads. Overall, FiddlerCore has excellent performance and unit testing features. But wait, there is more. We can also use FiddlerCore for network inspection and analysis to identify network delays and bottlenecks. We can also use it to find missing services in our application, as well as potential security flaws and dangers. So overall, FiddlerCore is a great tool for checking how your application works and behaves within the network. FiddlerCore library. Now that we have explored some of the most important use cases for FiddlerCore, it's important to dig a deeper into the library's feature. So that's what we are going to talk about. So previously we looked at various things and one of them was how to configure FiddlerCore, such as being able to register as a system proxy or how to use it to capture HTTPS network traffic. But it can also be used with a custom root certificate, and also FiddlerCore can be used to import and export sessions. And further to that, it can also be used to work and modify session flags. As this is an overview video, we won't have the time to cover all these functionalities. So going forward, we are going to focus on the essential ones. So let's explore this a bit further. Here, we can see some basic code that is required to register FiddlerCore as a system proxy. When FiddlerCore is registered as a system proxy, all the system network traffic is redirected to the FiddlerCore. In this way, it is able to first capture that traffic and also gives you the possibility to modify it. The way this works is that we have to first create a new instance of the FiddlerCore Startup Settings Builder class. And then we invoke the register as system proxy method of that instance and chain the build method on top of it. This will give us a startup config object that we can then pass as a parameter to the startup method of the Fiddler application class. As you have seen, this is a quite straightforward to do. There are also other methods that affect the system proxy settings, which you can read from the official documentation by following the link shown here on the screen. I will also mention this link in the description below. Now let's have a look at the following code that explains how to capture HTTPS traffic by hooking two events. So, to the before request event, we are assigning a session method that is responsible for overriding the session flag. In this case, for capturing network traffic from specific SSL protocol such as TLS 1.2, and to the before response events, we also assign a session method that is executed when a server response is received, which in this case decodes the body of the response. So, this is also straightforward and easy to follow. Regarding importing and exporting sessions, let's have a look at importing sessions first. So the first thing we need to do to import a session is to invoke the read session archive method from utilities, and to which we pass a callback which in this case prints and reads some information from the console and then returns the information read from the console. On the other hand, exporting a session is just one line of code, and it's all done by invoking the write session archive method from utilities, to which we pass the session to the exported as an array. There is also the possibility to use a custom provider to save FiddlerCore sessions, and this is nicely explained in the official document if you want to explore that further. End-to-end integration example. Okay, let's put some of what we have learned so far into practice. To do so, let's go over into an integration example by looking at a small .NET application that includes FiddlerCore. So here we are in Visual Studio and I have created a Windows Form application that uses the FiddlerCore library and is built with .NET 7. The application is very simple and it includes a rich text box component from a UI point of view, and this is very straightforward application. The start button, as its name implies, starts capturing network traffic using FiddlerCore. The stop button, on the other hand, stops capturing network traffic using FiddlerCore. The fetch Google button retrieves Google's homepage information using FiddlerCore. The FiddlerCore library has been integrated into the application as a NuGet package, which is only available from the Telerik NuGet server. Although installing FiddlerCore sits beyond the scope of this video, to install it, I simply had to create a Telerik account in order to connect to the Telerik NuGet server. All our application's code is available within the main.cs file. By using this statement, we can bring in the FiddlerCore library so our application can use it. Within the main class, we declare a private config variable that will be used to hold the FiddlerCore startup settings, which are then passed to the FiddlerCore library when it is started. And we also declare a variable that will indicate which port we have FiddlerCore to listen on. Next, we find the main constructor, which performs the initialization of the Windows Form components after we can see the main load method. This will get triggered when the form loads, and essentially what happens then is that we bind the Fiddler after session method to the Fiddler application after session complete event. Therefore, when the after session complete event is triggered, the Fiddler after session method gets executed. The other thing we do within the main load method is that we basically configure and initialize FiddlerCore, and the way we do this is by using method chaining on an instance of the FiddlerCore startup setting builder class. First, we specify the FiddlerCore what port it will be listening for network traffic. Then we register FiddlerCore as a system proxy, and by chaining these other methods, we ensure that FiddlerCore is able to grab the network traffic. And finally, the build method creates the FiddlerCore configuration based on all these options specified. Moving on, we have a method that gets triggered when the start button is clicked. Before we start FiddlerCore and capture network traffic, we check that FiddlerCore has not been started. And if that's the case, then we toggle the button and start FiddlerCore by invoking the startup method and passing the FiddlerCore configuration previously created. Moving on, here is the most interesting part of the application. It is in the after session method where the network traffic is captured and recompiled. And added to the rich text box of the Windows form in order to display the network data gathered. To do that, we need to ensure that the request body and the request headers from the session object that contains the captured network data are not known. If that is the case, we can get the string content of the request body as follows, and we can get the header information by obtaining the HTTP method used, the HTTP version, and the request method information. We then combine the request header and body information into one string, and that string is assigned through a delegate to the rich text box. The reason we are using a delegate instead of assigning the combined string value directly to the rich text box is because FiddlerCore runs on a separate thread than the UI thread, where the rich text box runs. The enable disable buttons method simply toggles from enable to disable the status of each button. When start is enabled, stop is disabled, and vice versa. Moving on, this method gets triggered when the stop button is clicked. And in order to shut down FiddlerCore and stop capturing network traffic, we need to ensure that the FiddlerCore has been started and is not been closed. In that case, the shutdown method can be invoked. And finally, we have the fetch Google button. Basically, what we do is to create a web proxy instance that listens on the port that FiddlerCore uses. And then, using that proxy, we fetch the details of the google.com web page. Once those details have been retrieved, we append those details to the rich text box using a delegate, given that both operations runs on different thread. And finally, we invoke FiddlerCore's shutdown method. So, to see this in action, let's execute the application. And then, right away, let's click on the start button in order to capture the network traffic. And we can see the network data being processed and captured by FiddlerCore. If we click on the Fetch Google button, we will able to retrieve Google's main page. So as you have seen, the code requires to integrate FiddlerCore into a .NET application. In this case, a C# Windows Form app was concise and straightforward. And within a few lines of code, we were able to capture network traffic. Summary: we have reached the end of this video, and hopefully you have learned a thing or two along the way. But before closing off, let's review the item we have covered in this video. First, we begin by setting the code's expectations and understanding what you will learn from this video. Then, we explored what FiddlerCore is all about and why it is important for you as a developer to consider. And after that, we explored the key technical aspect of FiddlerCore and basic concepts such as basic setup, configuration, and events. Then, we looked at the various use cases for using FiddlerCore in .NET applications. Then, we explored various key features of FiddlerCore as a library and looked at some code snippets. And finally, we put together everything we learned throughout this video by exploring an end-to-end integration example using FiddlerCore within a .NET application. Thank you for watching this video and never stop learning.